maybe they've played together a while on like non-Fire Strays rosters, but I haven't seen these guys around as Fire Strays in any of the MRCs. We're going into our advanced ban system, by the way. Bans made here are for the enemy team only. So you can ban something and then try and take it away. Both teams are going to ban Magneto first, but guess what? Virtus.pro have the first protect. So they're likely to probably protect EMEA here, I imagine, in order to make sure that they do not have it stolen out from under them.
Yeah, and then what's happened so far, at least today, is like Loki's been the ban here, and then you protect Emma Frost. So instead of seeing one or the other, both teams trying to go for the same. But even though the system's a little bit more complicated, once you sort of realize a lot of the typical tendencies, it becomes very straightforward. For the most general meta stuff, it's the first 3 picks and bans. For the more specific team stuff, knowing what the opponents like to play, it's probably the last 3 that you're looking at.
Yep, Luna going to be going away. You do not want to allow Loki and Luna on the same squad. And so, yep, that's going to be simultaneous bans of both Psylocke and of Loki. Protect now for Fire Strays. Of course, these protects are for the team that picks them only, just like the bans are only for the opposing team. What is going to be too impactful to Fire Strays' composition to offer up on the potential bans? Maybe you go for a Storm here for Veil, allow for more of these flyers to be used. Oh, Punisher. He has had quite the rise up in terms of pick rate during this tournament.
He's a good pick because he's just so well-rounded in whatever kind of comps that come up, whether it's like aerial, whether it's a bit more dive, whether it's just sort of mirroring to try and run Punisher yourself. I think it's interesting though that Virtus.pro, you always have to look at the pick commands that they've gone for. It's 3 supports in a row that they've gone for. And Invisible Woman being banned as well. Like, typically you haven't seen it too much. Ultron being banned on one side means that we're likely going to be seeing some potential like Ultron on the side of Fire Strays. The problem is that so many other supports are banned out. You might not even have 3 supports to run left, you know?
Yeah, you're really feeling a little bit thin on the ground with the options, so to speak. Getting rid of that Invisible Woman also means that forced repositioning is going to be a little bit difficult. It also, interesting note here, Whoops on the leftmost of your screen right now didn't play, I believe was for substitute for Fire Strays for most of their run. They mostly played with Luthern during their qualifier run, so we'll have to see how Whoops slips into that hit scan DPS role.
Yeah, Luthern was playing Bucky and Namor, I think, so it shouldn't be too unlikely, I suppose, that those heroes are picked up, but it is a baptism of fire. Sort of like the opposite, though, of the OG Seed game earlier, where it's like, yeah, you're up against a tough opponent, but it means that if this is your first game on broadcast, you're just like, it's Virtus.pro, everybody loses to them. So, like, let's just go out and just have fun. Like, we're expected to lose for the majority of people. Let's just give it a good shot. Virtus.pro, it's whether they can keep this gravy train going, and it's a hell of a prize pool to win. 3 million if they get all the way to the grand finals later this year. This is the first step towards it.
A new Fly hero released means a new hero into Veil's pool. And it's going to be difficult to match this one. Sparker coming out on the Punisher here. Well lauded as a hit scan duelist enjoyer, even though they have had a very wide hero pool, including many projectiles for now. Fi just standing above it all. It's an excellent aerial duelist to try and make sure that the Ultron doesn't get too much free reign. Getting in close with those fire clusters can be particularly brutal. For now, though, it feels like Fire Strays are just trying to generate themselves a dive that's worthwhile, and they'll give up some space on the point to do it. Fincy gets taken out already by Deppy. A great first play right there. The distraction from Binary and Whoops going into the back meant that Fincy just fell through the cracks.
Now they've just forced to back up. It should be a fairly easy take from Fire Strays. Nobody's really able to contest at this point with a group wall. Just going to shove things back for a moment, provide respite for Virtus.pro's Nevix. Trying to go for a bit more of a brawly comp when you look at the tanks available, but the rage of Ultron available. Everybody's sort of grouped up in this position, so it is going to force Virtus.pro back potentially.
Extermination Protocol does plenty of damage, but unfortunately it means that Whoops wasn't getting healing in that moment. Binary gets offered to the Ultron drone for a touch more sustainability, but look at how much cleave Saipe can do right now. Invisible Boundary, ready to go if only it's going to be necessary. You might want to have to pocket Sparker through this, but Dredro's already on the case. You get stood up in front of the miniguns, and you best believe you're going to fall. Sparker's damage is unbearable for Strays.
Yeah, very nicely cleaned up. Sparker doing pretty much all of the damage so far. Fi uncontested in the air. It's only one elimination that's actually come through to Finzi, and 35% has been able to be grabbed from Fire Strays up and at this point.
Quick reposition here from Virtus Pro, trying to be proactive with how they're responding to these pushes. And well, speaking of proactivity, Binary's ready to use the Living Legend, heading straight in towards our back line. And yeah, the Invisible Boundary has to be dragged out here to try and deal with the Dance of the Butterflies. Side pair feeling comfortable with Dredro for now. Fi, after using that Supernova, is going to feel the need to back on off. And this could actually be a flip in favor of Fire Strays of Virtus Pro to keep themselves on the point right now. Debbie's being scared off of this one, does not want to get walled off by Nevix on the Groot. Previously, Groot has kind of been the permaban for Virtus Pro heading into this, but the new ban system changing everything here. Too much damage onto Whoops. Multiple players mind controlled, and that means that it's easy pickups from above. Sparker just mag dumps into their skulls, and the knockouts are delivered.
Everything forced to reset yet again. Again, just that one elimination onto Finzi. That has been it. The only bit of damage that's been able to be achieved so far. And the setup's nice from Sparky. Did this last time too, just setting up on the turret, forcing out some of the burst damage, just buying more and more time with 75% on the clock by trying to catch the Captain America sort of on his lonesome. Might need to be forced to a reset, and that's just going to add up more time on Strays for them to suffer with.
Yeah, Binary's going to be able to pick up a health pack, but not much more than that. Exo noted on the other side for now, has to dive on down with the F in order to get out of harm's way. Exo caught on an angle. Sparker easy to track through that one. The final judgment's ready to go as well. Everyone grabbed on in, and guess what? That means headshot hitboxes are not going to be moving. You just mag dump them with two miniguns, and it's too much to bear. Sparker's damage, it's under the gaze of Bast, and T'Challa gazes down proudly upon his top fragger.
Yeah, it was just that sort of first fight, really, wasn't it? Just the way, I guess, that Fire Strays fought across the point, able to grab it first. But that was pretty much it. It was just sort of resets, bits of time. Everything up until then was very clean, very straightforward. Sparker being able to do so much damage uncontested, Fi being able to do that much damage uncontested. And quadruple supports is in hold, I suppose, for the time being. I don't think Fire Strays are going to be going for this so far, but the triple supports hasn't really been working with the Ultron, I don't think, because you are just missing some of the parts to make it work as well as it can do.
I mean, it's just so difficult to get an audacious peak on the Ultron against a player like Sparky, you know. And when you try and make these weird flying flanks work, maybe Fi floats up on you with that speed boost, and your disengagement is going to be a little bit wanting. Of course, we're going to swap him back over onto a cap now for Binary, or rather, what did Binary swap over onto? Okay, they've made a change here. No more cap. Instead of going for the Ember Frost, a little bit more frontline damage over the course of time when that beam starts to get built up. Supernova trapping in those Vanguards is a huge amount of damage, and the Mantis is going to try and sustain through it as Fi is forced to dive elsewhere. Still, there's going to be strategist ultimates invested from both sides. Exo grabbed out of their ultimate, smashed into the wall by Fincy, and well, Mantis, there's a puddle where she used to be, unfortunately, and Sparker just rolling on forward, shotgun ready to go if only there's going to be a moment. Nevix temporarily has to break through the walls, and well, that's going to be first cap.
Been able to push up this much as well. Just the resets keep on coming. With how clean that final, the last point that we saw was, meant that a lot of the ultimates were saved up for Virtus Pro. A very quick supernova from 5 just made these chokes to contest the point initially unobtainable for Fire Strays. They have a lot of ultimates themselves, built up to 4, maybe perhaps 5 with Kyoshin being very close to having the Eternal Bond. But it's what's going to be the push through power. You put so much premise onto Whoops' final judgment to be the thing that gets stuff going. This just looks too comfortable for Virtus Pro.
Man, taxing the approach, and do you want to try and play this without your final judgment? I doubt it. It's like your main offensive tool right now. Got to be careful not to get taxed on your exit too much, but you better believe that Nevix is not going to lay off anything for free. The ramp has been built, and well, Deppy's been built into a ramp themselves. The Flora Colossus turned into timber, and Fire Strays, they may be a light when it comes to the ticks that are available, but they can't get in a position to use them.
Pretty much by the book so far for Virtus Pro. Ultimate's not really been needed. I mean, are we still just on one elimination to the entirety of the team at this point? I think it's looking
so.
likely, yeah.
Okay, time to disengage. We leave. Oh, we're going to go for an Eternal Bond. They think that it's winnable right here. Will they be able to break through the healing of the Eternal Bond? It's a full investment here from Fire Strays. They see the opening. They found Nevix. They may well be correct, but it is indeed winnable. Staying in place is the group. Rises up the Ironwood wall in front of the Psionic Seduction, but it's Fire in the end who's lit his own fire underneath the Fire Strays. Exo moves forward with a Soul Resurgence, extra movement speed and over health for everybody, and healing to boot as well. Fire Strays click every Q they have their eyes on, and it gets them the point.
I mean, there's only one chance really for them to do it. I think it's only, again, just a few kills in order to sort of flip the point, but 99% for Virtus Pro means that they can consolidate what they have, build up some of these ultimates. Nevix with Strangling Prison might honestly be all they need if he plays this correctly. Trying to shove things back as much as possible, walls in the way to try to cut off this battlefield and pull things in, and he's found to the walls enough of a cut off, and Spark is setting up with the turret means that it's clean sailing. It's now over onto the side of Virtus Pro, overtime ticking away, and how do you even contest this if you Fire Strays?
I mean, they don't have any vanguards. It's going to have to be a squishy target that moves on in. Yeah, there's a speculative sedation coming through from a Mantis, but no one else is brave enough to step up to the plate. Maybe hoping that there'd be a return via a Doctor Strange pentagram of Ferrara portaling onto a point. But in this case, it's not to be held against Fire Strays. This is kind of what we expected coming on in. Fire's going to walk away with MVP, and it seems like Johnny far from dead.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's something that like Virtus Pro have been showing up consistently as well. Like, this is a team that sort of caught our attention at the Invitational because not only were they the team to be beating, but also they were scrimming North American teams instead of Europe. And they've started doing that again. In fact, a couple of teams have been doing that as well, sort of following suit. It's only 3 eliminations that actually went in against Virtus Pro. And just like Sparker and Fi both not dying, sort of goes to show like how comfortable it was for them to just sit in their positions, do damage, and really not be at any risk.
We can only assume that because Nevix, Fincy, and Cerebro all fell once, that they're getting kicked. So, lad, if you're looking for a new team, hit me up. I'm sure we can work something out.
Not good enough.
Spark has been just lights out on the Punisher. I mean, it might even demand a ban, but the thing about playing against Virtus Pro is that like target banning them is it's a little bit of a trap. And it's also interesting to see that Virtus Pro, given their recent predilection towards always first banning Groot and just preferring to play something like a thing-based composition, that we've always known that they have this Nevix Groot in the back pocket, but it's been sealed away in Carbonite for so long of their own choosing. But now they're kind of just letting the Groot hang out. Like, look, you can ban this if you want. We are very comfortable playing without it. But if you don't, we're probably gonna Groot gap here.
I mean, they could also pick the thing. Like, I think like previous events like Fight Nights and stuff, they have brought it out when it's been appropriate, right? So it's not like whilst teams have moved away from it, Virtus Pro are never too afraid to go to these characters, and especially if you're that good on them, like we saw with the Human Torch for Fi, it still feels meta and it's still a problem to deal with. It's just not many teams are as strong on as many characters as Virtus Pro are.
Yeah, Fire Strays, they have a lot to think about, and well, they've got a lot of learning to do in this series. It may come to an end quickly, but we'll have to find out if that's going to be the true case after this break. You come for the king, you best not miss, and right now the kings are lording over all of the land. The fiefdom of Virtus Pro is well and truly established right now as we exit Burning T'Challa, with Virtus Pro winning 2-0. But now, Fire Strays, they get to choose where we're going, Ryan. They have their own fate in their hands.
And you can sort of cheese the system, it almost feels like, to just keep going to domination to try a look. Granted, from that performance you might not even want to go there in the first place, but at the very least here you can sort of try and like, okay, we really like playing this convoy map or this convergence map. Let's see how Virtus Pro like take it apart. What is their decisions? How can we prepare for it in the future? So for Fire Strays, It is going to be difficult, but like they did get to this point in the tournament. They deserve to be here. It's a pretty new team, and like any opportunity to play up against the top dogs globally, I think you're going to take it and take what lessons you can from it.
Yeah, they might be able to pull out a fast one here. Like, admittedly, they won't be able to choose to go to domination, which has historically been the weakest map mode of Virtus Pro. But with our advanced ban system as well, you do have a chance of getting one over on your opponent. I was just listening to Knuten speak about it from Zero Tenacity recently, and he seems of the opinion that you can just win some of these games. They've gone to Araco. Oh, this is actually so cool. Going to a new map that Virtus Pro probably haven't scrimmed that much is just such an equalizer.
Yeah, it's also like another convoy, really, like we saw Midtown in the last series. Here it does feel a little bit like, okay, I don't think we saw Virtus Pro play this map at all. It was in Fight Night recently, but I think it was the week that they missed. So it's a little bit like Fire Strays are going, all right, Virtus Pro, show everybody what you've been preparing on this map. Let's all see what you're working on with the newest map added into the game. And so far, it's looking like the last draft pretty much identical as well, especially with both Emma Frosts being available for both teams.
All right, everyone wants to go in on the Emma Frost once again. Virtus Pro going to take away the Luna, not wanting to have to deal with the fate of both worlds, and the incredible output going to be a simultaneous ban for the next one here. Loki and Luna on the other side, so neither team's going to have Loki Luna. Question is now, do you try and save something like the Invisible Woman? Yep. Might well be the case. Yeah, you want to keep one of those primary defensive ultimates available from your strategist. Virtus Pro get the next ban, and then finally protect.
Trying to think of like whether Human Torch would be, for example, like somebody that's worth picking up. You've got that team up with Invisible Woman. Granted, that's never really the reason why he's in play. It's just that he's very consistently good. But just when you're playing flyers, like the high grounds, because you've got the payload moving, all of these like 90-degree angles high up that you can avoid. But then you've got all of the portals, you've got the high ground, low ground stuff. It's going to be really interesting to see what teams pick. And actually, the Human Torch being banned now, final sort of little trick, I suppose, for Fire Strays to make sure the Virtus Pros Fi can't pick it up this time.
Yeah, just keeping Fi down on the ground. We haven't seen too much of I think we may have seen a touch of Fi playing Storm, but isn't really one of their go-to picks. Vale, on the other hand, loves to play both a Storm and the Human Torch, and maybe the Human Torch here being banned out, meaning that there's not really that much of a great aerial duelist to match the Johnny, considering that I think that Johnny's probably the best air-to-air duelist, given that he can get in real close, has an escape to try and work with the F, and has like a shotgun style gun as well to try and work with. May give Vale a little bit of additional wiggle room.
Yeah, and you also get the team up with Invisible Woman that gives you some like extra like HP as well if you need it in a cinch. So you have a lot to work with, more so than most typical flyers. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what Virtus Pro do on this map. It feels very like akin to the stuff that we've seen from Convoys previously. It's also thematically really cool to see a giant Ent walk around and turn what looks like Milton Keynes car park into lovely like aura.
You Miltoning the Keynes.
yeah. Degentrifying it.
Taking it back to its roots.
Quite literally.
Letting the Druids reclaim it, another Flora Colossus. Don't know if we have many examples of those in the comics apart from Groot themselves. Fi speculating at the moment as to where to try and place this Feral Leap. Going up against a Gamma-assisted Namor does mean that those Gamma Squids are going to be a constant thorn in the side of these characters that do not have the easiest ability taking them down. It's going to be mostly on the Punisher to try and do that. Hold up! What is this? Grab there from Fi. Just takes Vale for a ride for a little while longer. Throws a bit of a mechanical demon, even on the Wolverine.
He was thinking so much about whether he could, he didn't think enough about whether he should. I mean, these dashes have been good, and like being able to jump onto the Emma Frost, force out Diamond Form, and force them back means that even though these fights from Fi's perspective have been a little bit comedic, the payload is still moving. Virtus Pro are getting past this first annoying choke.
Gotta remember this death drop on the left-hand side as well. You could be instantly knocked out if you get sent down into the abyss below by something like an invisible woman. Out comes the eternal bond right here. It's go time for Virtus Pro, and it seems like we're going to try and shut down Dreedra, but Dreedra simply fades away. You can't pull out the same tricks we've seen previously. Depi falls to a Thorn Lash wall that, well, Nevic's got up just behind him right at the moment that it was needed. An invisible boundary brought up here by Kiyoshi, and Nevic's is taking so much damage here from the Gamma Squids. I think they have been dealt with here by Sparker, who has a final judgment ready to go if it's going to be needed. For Exo, it's a little bit of a solo engagement right now. The remainder of Fire Strays are going to eventually jump into this one and get it up real nice and close. Get dragged out of the Strategist ultimates by the Groot ultimate itself, and you know, locking them in place so it's easy headshots does mean that Final Judgment tends to just get through those ults.
This is not going to be contestable at all. Like, that's the most crazy thing about this from Virtus Pro. It wasn't like there was an engagement and then the point stayed still. Throughout all of that, Virtus Pro somehow were just moving the point forward because of how Fire Strays were taking the fights. They just, once they won that engagement, they got the final, like, checkpoint and able to move on to this next stage.
All right, stage 2. We have not seen much Arako in pro play yet, but Virtus Pro seem undeterred thus far.
Moving.
Yeah, Sentient seized. Fincy moving up real close here, going up against that diamond form. Is immune to seize. Oh, that is such a massive kick. Oh, the carbon crush. And boy, is it crushing right now. They'll get to mid-air there onto Fincy, shutting down the reign of terror that Emma Frost had upon the back line. And Fire Strays, even down Kiyoshi, might finally be able to control this high ground and really start to break this time bank.
Yeah, but it's again like the payload has maybe moved down to one person on it for the time being. Now it's actually like able to be held for Fire Strays to an extent, but it was expensive with the ultimates used. Barker 75% towards having a final judgment. Now is the thing that really carved open the final point, and Psionic Seduction might mean that it's not required at all. Hulk is just peppered down. It goes into the Punisher ultimate to be able to maybe put this one to bed and take this fight, but Fire Strays are doing well to just keep themselves in it. Nobody's been eliminated whilst all this fight is going on, and in fact Sparker's the one to go down first.
Yeah, the Gamma Squid, it's just the Gamma Monstro spawn. Over time it scales up its damage, and because there was no real mobility available for Sparker, it just locked onto him. And then it continually started building up that damage until the pocket could no longer sustain them. Still Virtus Pro even down Sparker. Able to clutch out here. Binary is going to be returning on the Hulk, but Fire Strays, they're almost all out of resources.
Fighting this is going to be uncomfortable. You do have a supernova. You know that there's not going to be a final judgment combination, so being able to throw 5 tornadoes on the point, force back Virtus Pro, at least for the time being, is going to be key. We're 2.5 minutes on the clock. Stalling out here for a bit more time is almost necessary, it feels like, because Virtus Pro made a pretty easy job of this thus far. Invisible boundary available for Saipe. It's just going to throw it down in a more aggressive position, and the rest of the team is going to finish the job.
Look at how explosive that fight was as well. The force physics to pull in Kiyoshi's into the invisible boundary, where it was so hard to target heals on them from the side of Exo as well. Classic VP.
By movement as well to just leap in, keep things moving, keep this upward pressure going. Both tanks comfortable to be pushed up this far to try and take these engagements, and oh, they almost actually kill Whoops. Needs to be careful there with the burst damage that he just took. You're not even in the engagement here, you're just trying to prepare yourself.
Fine. Slicing away right now. Still has plenty of rage to work with, as well as that ultimate, the last stand. Good to go. You can maybe get a surprise onto someone. Drag them off of the high ground using the last stand. Tries to go for a grab. Doesn't work out. Doesn't want to invest the ultimate after getting pulled back in. What a good play by Kiyoshi's here. You've got to try and make a move here to stop the Flora Colossus from rolling on forward, though. And it seems like Dreedra thinks that this one is still winnable. Big strangling prison. Up goes. Oh, they're doubling up on their strategist ultimates to try and get enough healing. They had both the Eternal Bond and the Invisible Boundary, but still someone felt how much damage Sparker is doing. It's a strike back, though, off the back of the strangling prison. But from here, Virtus Pro just fight their way out of the gulag. They fight their way out of the prison. These bars can't hold them.
You find the first elimination, you go onto the point and you stack both your ultimates and it's still not enough. That's pretty much the Virtus Pro experience for the most part. Push all the way to the spawn doors. Kyoshi's having to just get invisible, get onto the point to try and contest it because there's no way in otherwise. Whoops, using the final judgment, finds the opening. And this sort of split attention has provided Fire Strays a way back into this one. Wasn't just the invisible woman just buying a bit of time. It pulled Virtus Pro back and split their focus completely.
I mean, that was high value, yeah? Mess with the game plan, make sure that with Nevix and Fincy in positions where they thought they were going to be supportive, they couldn't be more wrong about that. The mugging in the backline from Kyoshi's got it all done.
Spark is still chipping away enough damage. One of the defining factors in how these fights have gone well for Virtus Pro has been the final judgments. Not too far away yet again. Binary Psionic Seduction would be really nice to sort of shut some of these big ultimates down ahead of time, but you can sort of see the position that Virtus Pro are fighting from. It's going to be hard to line it up.
There's the Sonic Seduction. Just bringing up the Ironwood wall to try and have some cover physically from there. Oh, whoops. Great tracking early on. And the Eternal Bond is not in time to save the members of Virtus Pro. Have already fallen down. Saipe and Nevix, they're going to be wishing they were here for this one. Sentient seized away from Drijo on that cloak and dagger, and it's just another disengagement coming through. Virtus Pro have had to call this one despite having the staying power of the Eternal Bond.
Strangle Prison for Nevix. Final judgment. Final chance, it feels like, for Virtus Pro. If they want to finish out this map, they've been pretty much sort of cruising through so far. Scenic route, the turret and Veil enough damage to actually shut this down yet again. So Virtus Pro having to reset, regroup themselves, take this fight. Have a lot to work with, but Fire Strays have built up ultimates of their own. It's just whether the final judgments, which is going to go first, and Deppy strangling Prison to match Nevix's.
A pair of prisons to be laying down upon the ground. This time for Virtus Pro, it's a different pathing moving forward. A first strike goes the way of Fire Strays. They've already used the final judgment. Whoops has managed to find Sparker in a judgment versus judgment call. He had the greater thoughts, the higher wisdom score, and he hit his saving throw. There's only 1 second remaining, and it's the last chance saloon here from Fincy, going up with the Sonic Seduction. He's overwhelmed in a 6 versus 1. A last chance touch coming through from Nevix.
Not back.
Portal kicked back through it by the Carbon Crush. The EMEA too difficult to deal with, but Binary's bitten off more than they can chew. A slight feed through with Saipe falling down courtesy of Veil. It's an all-out brawl behind the portal, using it for cover. Oh, the final stand. Fire's managed to find an opening into the backline. They look mortal for a moment, but it was Shrek pulling the sword out from his armpit like, nah, you ain't got me, cuz.
Oh, it was so close for Fire Strays. Now they've just sort of reset in to try and get that final fight right at the end. The dive in from Deppy is the thing that's going to be able to open this, and the Supernova Invisible Boundary just sort of thrown down whenever it feels appropriate. They're just backing out of it for the most part, and overtime is pretty much at the end of its wick. If we do see Virtus Pro slip off for a second, it's going to be the end of this attacking half for them. But they've got enough bodies here, they've got enough support, enough healing, they've got through these defensive ultimates. Now it's a case of just getting your own and putting the final nail in.
Whoops has a final stand to try and match this one. Deppy's got so much extra health as well from the Feast of the Abyss. But tracking works out better for Sparker. Guardian Shield's exactly where it needs to be. And now Sparker's getting up close and personal. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Frank Castle's here to hunt you down and take you to the Shadow Realm. And while Veil may well have come in, there's plenty of healing now. It's going to be Eternal Bonds from both sides. Great sustainability. Remember that Fierce Strays is so close to their spawn room as well. But while stunned in place by Nevix, it's plenty of headshots that can be delivered, and critical damage proves too much to live through.
Yeah, a brutal fight in the end. It sort of looked like towards the end the Fire Strays might be able to just at least stop Virtus Pro from finishing the map. It ended up being a really good play from Nevix to bring out the Doctor Strange to get the portal to come through. Nice idea from Binary to sort of knock them back with the kick, but they're still able to just get on the point by mere seconds to put it into overtime. For Fire Strays to match that, it's going to be hard. Even if we did see Virtus Pro being stuck in that first position that they almost like had the map finish in, Fire Strays still have a lot of the map to get through in order to match it, and I don't think it's going to be that easy to do that.
It's not going to be easy, but it is crucially doable. Burning the entire time bank, nothing to be sniffed at. Shutting down FYR. A lot better this time around as well. Not seeing many feral leaps really strike pay dirt at the moment. And you know what? I think that Deppy's also making a case for being a pretty solid Groot here as well, going up against Nevix. We're seeing that similar adaptation from FYR Strays here of trying to win these initiative roles and just going straight for the fight that they want to take rather than playing reactively to Virtus Pro being able to craft the perfect fight.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Virtus Pro sort of bit matched mechanically, but they just have the sort of right idea on, like, especially as the fights get past 30 seconds where the strat kind of goes out the window and it's just all coming down to the coordination and practice, where you got a team that's been together almost 2 years versus one that's been maybe together 2 weeks. So naturally, Virtus Pro are going to have those advantages there. You've got this position that's constantly being taken up by the Punishers. This time it's actually Whoops on the other side, who's had a pretty impressive debut, I have to say. It's a hard debut to play in, but he's held his own as much as he possibly can.
Yeah, FYR gets out, keeping the regenerative healing factor crucially. Sniper was looking for a cheeky push into the death pit there, but it is not going to be coming through in this case. A new one ready to go rather shortly. Veil's just got such a nice angle here as well and isn't so bothered about the potential pushes coming through from Sniper, who's already got themselves an invisible boundary. Oh, Whoops has got a great angle here as well. That means Spark is going to require a little bit of a pocket to try and make this one work, but already found FYR in the midst of all this. Thinks he has to disengage. The Vanguard line of FYR Strays are just washing over Virtus Pro right now as all of the attention's going Sparker's way. Yes, Saipe's there with the pocket, but it might well require the invisible boundary to try and deal with this one. Fincy knocks Deppy off the map. That's so much value coming through from the kick, and Virtus Pro should be able to convert off the back of this one.
Veil's just was pretty much uncontested when it came to the damage, but now the focus in, he's just not able to do enough to really scare Virtus Pro. They've been comfortable. It has forced out, I think, the Psionic Seduction for Binary, but it was a little bit too late. A couple of people had already gone down in that engagement, and there wasn't much follow-up on it at all.
I'm not sure if I would have invested that invisible boundary myself when Deppy was already off the map, but FYR Strays, maybe they saw something that I did not. Deppy almost got the Strangling Prison ready to go. Nevix beat him to a punch first. FYR. Question is, when it comes to pressing that Q, are they going to be equally quick? It looks like Nevix might actually be cooking on the off angle here. You've got to worry about that Guardian Shield, though. If it blocks the incoming damage, it could be... Oh, a full rotation here. Wait, FYR's going to end up behind them after going through that TP. Yeah, there he goes. Caught out by Kiyoshi's. Maybe a little bit less familiar with where all of these teleporters are going right now, only mostly coming through from the ranked experience. Fail gives over the speed boost here, making sure that everyone can disengage as best they can from the dual ultimates. Profit here by Virtus Pro. Sonic Seduction and Last Judgment both used up, but now there's not going to be too much to try and deal with Whoops and with this Omega Hurricane. They are just going to be able to heal through it crucially. Veil not getting too much value off the back of that one, and there it is. Prison, the last moment. Sparker from downtown just pumps him full of lead.
I think with all of that, the one thing I wanted to shout out was Finzy's Psionic Seduction, because it didn't really lead to any eliminations, but it was just as FYR Strays took control of the point. Finzy did it, everybody got off of it. They were trying to sort of save their skin. Virtus Pro stopped the objective from moving. It's the polar opposite of what we saw on their attacking side, that Virtus Pro were able to take fights whilst the payload was still going. The FYR Strays, they're taking fights and even winning some engagements, getting kills, but the objective is not moving anywhere.
Oh, FYR can cook here for sure. The first Whoops needs to be taken care of. Finzy gets isolated by multiple Groot walls and up against two miniguns with nothing else to talk about. And now we have to move on forward. Grab all of this space. It's been a big Virtus Pro disengage, though. They've got back onto the objective to make sure that it's not easily taken from FYR Strays. And even if they have to lose this fight, they can tax that time so well. The Flora Colossus starting to move. Maybe a kick off of the map and attempt to try and turn it around. Binary can't quite get the same value that Finzy did. FYR's ready to go with the last stand at the last moment too, but Spark is going to be the first one to hit. Out comes Veil with the Omega Hurricane. Multiple players brought on in, and Deppy with the Spore Bomb. Absolutely so seeds of destruction across the map.
My God, it's just a Wolverine that's able to contest. It's pretty much forced to overtime, and First Pro have just been amazing at that, really. Like, that fight was going so well for FYR for so long. It's only the end that things actually start moving along, meaning that First Pro almost have like 2 fights that they could potentially take with these angles to sort of play around, but they only need 1. The Strangler Prison for Nevix available again very quickly after using it last. There's enough to have people dive in on top of it, and people are starting to go down on the side of FYR.
Drags him in brutally quickly. R2 players kicked into the wall. Binary and Deppy, they can't stand up to a force of nature that is Fincy. And yeah, there may well be an eternal bond to try and work with, but they're going to be dragged from it so easily by the Sonic Seduction. Just bouncing in place. Fincy's bouncing on the pad, dragging everyone over. Drijo in return is going to use their own eternal bond for plenty of staying power. It's a last chance saloon comeback here from Whoops. Moving in with the portal. It's going to be rather close to their ultimate, but unfortunately the sustain just isn't there, and Deppy falls so quickly before the damage of Sparker's final judgment. Despite quite the spirited defense for FYR, they aren't able to get one over on the King.
Not at all. Dominant day so far for Virtus Pro, but that's to be expected right at the start of this. And really, it's like every team, I think, regardless of whether it's EMEA or across the pond, is going to be looking at the way the Virtus Pro approach some of those fights to take things sort of comfortably, right? It really did feel like FYR had to dominantly win an engagement to just get a couple of meters on the objective, whereas Virtus Pro were taking those fights so well on the attack, it was almost always constantly rolling along. 4K damage from Sparker. I mean, Vale was matching him almost like 4K behind. It's just the sustain and healing that was available to both Saipe and Drijo made it a fairly standard day in the office for them.
Yeah, let's roll on back through the highlights here to remember how it all went down. Vale getting plenty of damage done on the Johnny. I feel like this was definitely some insight into like how FYR will do against less dominant teams, you know? Like, this is a team that is by no means one you can count out in the lower bracket. They just got an unlucky draw going up against Virtus Pro first. I don't think there's anyone in this tournament who would be confident going up against Virtus Pro first up in our group stage. So the dreams of playoffs are far from gone. Fincy's still nasty no matter what he's playing as well, by the way. But I'm liking the current evolution in tactics that's coming through from Virtus Pro, where they use the Strangling Prison and Final Judgment to just lock people in place so you can hit all headshots all the time and beat out the healing that the strategist ultimates so often use to respond.
I mean, Virtus Pro were always really good at like forcing out support ultimates and then sort of dealing the heavy damage, so that's just almost like you have everything lined up, you take the fights, even just the target selection. But I think that this series even was just a case of tempo, of like, okay, you find the first elimination, you win that fight, what can you do with it with that time window that you've just allowed yourself? Virtus Pro were able to just get tempo despite not winning the fight some of the time, and then FYR, just like whether it was over focusing on trying to get fights, whether they weren't focusing enough on the objective or taking fights past the objective to get things moving, it's definitely worth looking back on and being like, how could that have gone better for us? Because it didn't feel bad with some of the fights that we took.
And I'd love to see more Araco picks from FYR here as well. I think that against established teams that have been scrimming for a lot longer and know each other's tendencies a lot better, maybe pulling out the map that they haven't scrimmed as much, where we don't know their rotations as in and out, where things aren't as crucially second nature, could be a little bit of a tech pick. So I'd like to see FYR continue down this path. I believe in the value of the Araco pick.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly to get information on what people are doing as well on the new map. It did feel a little bit like for Central Park, we didn't see it all that much. Granted, it was like the timing of the tournament and stuff. But even like Midtown was sort of left for a little bit up until teams sort of worked it out, with like Storm being really good at the time, and then it was used a lot more. Araco, I think it is just teams being like, okay, what works here? And Punisher with the high low, the long sight lines with the turret that you could just mow people down from, seems to be the most obvious choice for teams to work with.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes guy with gun just go good and go brrr, and you know, sometimes that's enough when you got these long sightlines. And certainly seems like Sparker and Whoops were getting it done of what they had proffered right there. The resurgence of Groot is certainly interesting as well. We've seen, I think this is some of the, we haven't seen a huge amount of Groot today. We've seen a lot of Emma, we've seen a lot of Cap, we've seen a lot of Mag, we've seen a good amount of Hulk as well. But a lot of our teams reticent to bring out the Groot, even when it's not banned. But what can I say? Like, it's kind of a classic Certified Classic in EMEA from the side of Virtus Pro. We got ourselves a bracket update now to see where we're going to be heading off to next. Virtus Pro now going to be going up against we've got ourselves the group A first. This is Schmungus versus Berber Patapim, and that's going to be an interesting matchup. Tomorrow we've got to figure out how Zero Tenacity and Blood Cayudo match up, as well as All Business and Low 9.
Yeah, in the elimination bracket, OG Seed versus 0%. Considering how those first games went, it's just hard for OG Seed, right? Like, you have to quickly fix things for, I believe it'll be Sunday that they play next. 0% weren't really that far behind Berber Papim, so they should be feeling fairly comfortable going into that series. Might be OG Seed that we see going out in that 0-2 fashion. The other teams for Z10 versus Cariudo and All Business L9, like you said, we'll see them tomorrow. Same with Dusty Insight, Peps, Young Kanda as well. But we do see the upper bracket game of Virtus Pro versus Rad, which should be a good one, seeing exactly where Rad are, whether it can do a little bit more damage and be as scary as Berber Patapim have been in the past. And then Firestrays versus Kadzia, which that's a really like sad, I suppose, like first elimination game, because those two teams could go relatively far if they get a good bracket in their favor.
Yeah, sometimes there's a little bit of RNG to it, but in the end, you're not going to win unless you can beat everybody, right? Dusty and Insomnia going to be the next up, as well as Peps and Yoinkanda. Going to be a battle of the French squads between Peps and Yoinkanda, which is certainly going to be interesting to see. Etsu leading the other half of Old OG to victory, potentially, as there was that little schism where we saw that Enzo managed to pick up Polly and Pokey, and it feels like Berber Patapim may have got the better half of the house in the divorce, you know? They may have walked away with the car and the kids and the dog in the house.
Antanuki,
Antanuki, the prized kid. We'll see if that's going to be a storyline that pays off later on.
Oh, for sure. Like, we definitely saw like exactly what makes this region so like exciting, and we've seen like teams like Berber Papim versus Pro play like consistently in other tournaments. Like 0%, we've not seen that much. All Business we haven't seen in months at this rate, so seeing all 16 teams play not only across today but tomorrow gives us a good glimpse of what the region can offer at this point.
Graphic design is our passion here at Marvel Rivals Ignite. 24-0 for our invincible bear pack of Virtus Pro, yet to be challenged, but never without a challenger on the horizon. Next up is going to be, it could be Rad. I mean, Rad are a team that have played them close before, but they can't do a bunch of cope domination picks like a lot of teams have done to try and get one over on Virtus Pro. Here's how our matches played out today. This was to be expected, of course. We're very early in the group stage, which means often it's Seed 1 versus Seed 8 and so on and so forth. We're going to get our closer games tomorrow, I imagine, as the more unknown factors start to clash.
Literally unknown, with some teams just being in the under the ice, I think, since the Invitational or even the championship. So, you know, Dusty we haven't seen since then. Insomnia GG I constantly hear good things about. Even like Low 9 is very similar in that practice. So those first two games are very like the old versus the new, I think. But then as the day gets on a little bit more, like Peps versus Yoinkanda, two very sort of well-known tenured teams. Same with Zero Tenacity and Blood Cariudo. Both squads looking like dark horses to make playoffs out of their respective group.
Yeah, the dark horses are ready to really show their stuff here. I'm very excited to see how these lesser known teams, or at least in the lesser seen teams in some cases, as you said, All Business, there's like no tape on them since MRC. So we don't really know what they look like right now. But when it comes to knowing what people look like, I know that you guys in the audience love to look fabulous. And you can look fabulous with the new bundle coming through from Marvel Rivals Ignite with our new costumes. You better believe us to have the claws out and fins up, baby. Prey on the weaknesses of your enemies as Wolverine's Weapon X and Jeff the Landshark's Sunshine Landshark costumes. There's no need to tame your instincts. It's time to get animalistic. It's time to go, ow, and hunt them down. They're already available in-game, you know, so go and pick them up, use your units, and look absolutely summer fresh.
I mean, I always like the skin on the left. It reminds me of the old like Wolverine's Revenge games. I especially like the level with like Jeff's costume as well. Just the juxtaposition of the two as well is great. Like they know what they're doing to put one of the worst days of his life for Wolverine and then just Jeff chilling in the summer sun right next to him.
He's having a fantastic time, you know. Like, Jeff hasn't been on holiday before, maybe. Actually, maybe all time on land is a holiday for Jeff the Land Shark. I don't know. Well, Jeff's getting a break, and so too are you. But make sure that you stick around here on the Marvel Rivals Twitch channel, because you better believe that America's is going to be coming your way soon. They've got plenty of close games, and we have basically coverage all throughout the next 4 days of all the best things happening in Marvel Rivals Ignite. So do not go anywhere, and we will see you for more EMEA tomorrow. Thanks for watching.